Good afternoon, my name is Brendan O'Brien and I'll be talking about the video game industry from 1961 to 1985. So just a brief outline there of what we're going to be covering. So in the beginning, Steve Russell created the first shoot 'em up called Space War, one of the earliest video games. He made the source code to Space War open to encourage developers of the 60s to experiment on their own games, give them a bit of a feel for game development. Then we go on to the godfather of the video games, Nolan Bushnell, founded Atari in 1972 and is pretty much credited with creating the video game industry. He created the first coin-op machine, which in turn led to the popularization of video arcades throughout the United States of America. Then November 29th, 1972 saw the release of Pong, one of the most influential games of all time. It was the first commercially successful video game, and it also pretty much gave birth to the video game industry as we know it. Then on to the crash of 77. This was caused by other manufacturers flooding the market with Pong clones. These then in turn sold their systems at a loss to get rid of stock. This crash led to what is called the golden age of arcade games. And in this golden age, we've seen Space Invaders, saw the end of the crash. Better graphics and creativity in game development, seeing the rapid growth of video arcades across the planet, and this was reflected in sales of arcade machines increasing from 50 million in 1978 to 900 million in 1981. Then on to Pac-Man. He's considered a classic of the video game medium. He was the first real protagonist in games and was the first game to develop merchandise for the brand that was Pac-Man. He appealed to both sexes and one of the highest grossing games of all time, with 2.5 billion in sales to date. Then came the second crash of 83. It was a combination of several factors, pretty much super saturation of the market with below par games, loss of publishing control, and high profile failures, which most notably was E.T. by Atari, which in turn led to the dominance of home console markets switching from the US to Japan, and licensing restrictions were implemented, and because of E.T., Atari pretty much ceased being a big player in the video game industry. And then on to New Horizons. With the shift from the US to Japan, we see the birth of the 8-bit era, with the NES and the Sega Master System battling it out. Also saw the transition from flip screen graphics to scrolling graphics, which was seen as a major leap in games. And with these new systems, we had two new heroes. On the Nintendo it was Mario, and on the Master System was Sonic the Hedgehog. Mario was seen as a more family friendly hero. Sonic was developed as a more edgier character to try and get teenagers to play games. And these two games were one of the first to bring proper storytelling and emotions into the games. And then on a bit of a reflection, we see that from the beginnings of Pong right through all the bad times, there's a massive industry alive which is loved by millions and millions around the world, and video games can be seen as an art form that are rivaling the film industry and the music industries. So thanks for listening. I'm Brendan O'Brien.